Wink Martindale has resigned as the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, which means Brian Daboll is going to have to find somebody to fill the shoes that Wink Martindale is going to be leaving behind. So in today's video, we're going to go through 11, 12 names that could potentially be on a list to be the next DC of our New York Football Giants. But first, I got a little bit of a bone to pick with all the real ones out there. First, I want to say a huge shout out to all the real ones. We're almost at 42,000 subscribers, but the offseason is here. This is when stuff randomly pops up, and now is the time to turn your notifications on. So if you're subscribed, go below the video, click the bell icon, select all. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Change it. Free Giants content every day. Welcome into New York Giants Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. Appreciate you guys stopping by as we go over the top options to be the next D coordinator for Big Blue. Obviously, Wink Martindale has stepped away. He resigned, and from what I am hearing, it is due because of the relationship, or really the lack thereof, a relationship when it comes to him and Brian Daboll. And Wink is going to leave big shoes to fill. Not only is he just a good DC, I think he's a great mentor. I think he's a good teacher, and I think he's a good developer of young talent. We've seen that over the last 2 years. Young players get ready and up to speed quickly under Wink Martindale. I mean, this season, the Giants, after I think through the first 5 games of the year, didn't have a turnover, and they ended up tied for first when it comes to turnovers forced in the NFL. It's not going to be easy. And to be honest with you, you're not going to find someone probably just as good or better than Wink Martindale. But you got to find the next closest thing because he was damn good. And I'm still upset that Wink Martindale is no longer a part of this organization. We'll get to some external options that could replace Wink, but let's talk about internal Wink replacements. I think there's 2 guys that everybody should keep their eyes on when it comes to potential internal options to be elevated to the defensive coordinator position. I'm first going to start with the defensive back coach, Jerome Henderson. And then I'm talking about a guy like Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach. I bet both of these gentlemen will get interviews to get this job. I'm a big fan of Andre Patterson. Career year for Dexter Lawrence under Patterson. You see Jordan Riley as a rookie look really good under Patterson. A'Shawn Robinson look good. Raheem Nunez-Roches has looked good. I'm keeping my eyes on Patterson and kind of hoping he makes it to the final stages of this process. Let's talk about some external options. And the number one name that I am going to be keeping my eye on, a name that we've told you about time and time again on this program, is Leslie Frazier, former defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills and former head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. Why does Leslie Frazier make sense, and probably why is he the favorite to be the new DC? Well, one, he has a relationship with Brian Daboll, and I think that is going to be critical going forward, considering the fallout between Daboll and Martindale, whether it was Daboll's fault or Martindale's fault. Martindale did have a fallout in Baltimore with Harbaugh, so maybe it's a little bit more slanted to his side. But if you're going to work with Daboll at this point, you got to know what you're walking into, and Leslie Frazier does that. Also, Joe Schoen is a fan. He interviewed to be the New York Giants head coach prior to the Giants hiring Brian Daboll. Also, it was reported that Brian Daboll's number one choice to be the defensive coordinator was Leslie Frazier. He also visited a New York Giants practice during the spring, which tells me that he and Daboll still have a really good working relationship. And I also like a guy that's been a head coach before, because we know Daboll is an offensive-minded guy. I know Belichick said in the past that Daboll's one of the only guys in the league that could coach offense and defense, but I want Daboll to be solely focused on the offense. And if you can have a guy like Leslie Frazier, who's been a DC and been a head coach, just hand him the keys to the defense and say, get the job done. When you look about what he's done as a DC, I only want to spend time as Buffalo. He's been a DC multiple spots before. But his defense in Buffalo was pretty damn good, especially in 2021 and 2019. In 2019, they gave up the second least amount of points per game. In 2021, he gave up the least amount of points. He was the number one scoring defense in the league. A lot of talent there. Also, Sean McDermott is a defensive-minded coach, so a lot of credit should go around. But Leslie Frazier is the guy that I think everyone should familiarize themselves with and keep their eyes on as the next Wink Martindale replacement to be the Giants DC. Another guy similar to Leslie Frazier, former head coach and a guy that's been him around the block a time or two. I'm looking at Mike Zimmer, former head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, you look at the coaching history of Zim, and he's been everywhere. He's coached in college. He's coached in the NFL. former DB coach for the Dallas Cowboys. He's known to be a guy that can develop young defensive backs. And with guys like Deonte Banks, potentially Jason Pinnock, and other young players on this team, I would like for Zimmer to be that guy. He was the Falcons DC in 2007, Bengals DC for 5 seasons, and then he was the Vikings head coach for a really, really long time, and then a Jackson State consultant in 2022. You talk about why Zimmer? Well, because he was the head signal caller and the mastermind and the brains behind one of the best defenses in recent NFL history. In 2017, the Minnesota Vikings were that team. Number 1 scoring defense, number 2 rushing defense, number 2 passing defense, number 1 yards per play, and number 1 when it comes to getting off the field on third downs. A lot of this is because of Zimmer. Had a lot of good players on that team as well. I like the experience. I love the aggressive nature that he has. And I think when you go from being a head coach in this league, and then you're out of this league, and then you have to take a demotion, that really kind of takes... your ego takes a hit in some sense. And I believe Zimmer is going to come back motivated, and he wants to prove to people that he is one of the best defensive minds in this league. I would not be mad at all if he is the next guy for Big Blue. Another guy that I am interested in is the inside linebacker coach for the New England Patriots, better known as one of the best linebackers in the 2000s, Jerod Mayo. What do I love about him? Well, he learned from the absolute best to ever coach defense in Bill Belichick. There is a reason why Jerod Mayo is the head coach in waiting for when Bill Belichick either A, decides to leave, or B, is pushed out the door. If Bill Belichick is back as the head coach for the New England Patriots, does Jerod Mayo look around and say, maybe I should leave? Or maybe he waits it out. He's already waited out this long. I think it'd be a great option. I love a guy that's played in the league that can help guys that are currently playing in the league. I think relationships matter, and I think having a coach, especially a DC, that can relate to players on defense means a lot. And once again, he's learned from Bill Belichick. Be really a cool idea if Jerod Mayo got a guy. Was one of the guys. What about this, though? Once a Giant, always a Giant. And when you talk about someone that is the definition of what it means to be a New York football Giant, I'm talking about Antonio Pierce, currently the interim head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. He is going to be a part of the head coach, I don't want to say competition, head coach race to be the next guy for the Las Vegas Raiders. But when you talk about a guy that can lead men, not many people do it than Antonio Pierce. He did it when he wore number 58 and was the inside linebacker of a Super Bowl champion New York Giants team. He knows what it takes to win in this team, in this city. He knows what it takes to embody to be a New York Giant. And every single player on the Las Vegas Raiders has pretty much said Raiders players want him to be the head coach. That says DC. Raiders players want him as the head coach. You talk about Max Crosby. You talk about all the players on the Las Vegas Raiders. They have come out and pretty much said they want Antonio Pierce to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And for good reason. He deserves it probably, but you know what? In the NFL, I've learned not everything is fair. And if AP doesn't get that job, he should be on a short list of names that should be in contention to be the next defensive coordinator of the New York Football Giants. I'm also looking at Evero, the defensive coordinator currently for the Carolina Panthers. He's bounced around a couple of times, and when you talk to people in the know of people that are rising the ranks and guys that are going to be continuing to get a lot of heat around the league, Evero is a hot name to keep an eye on. I was talking to people in the Chat Sports studios, and they're like, he's going to get a head coach job in the next couple of years, and it's because of what he's able to do as a teacher, but also a defensive coordinator. Dan Duggan of The Athletic said this about Evero, quote, Evero is a highly regarded young coordinator who could become available based on the turnover in Carolina, where head coach Frank Wright was fired midseason. The 42-year-old Evero had a strong debut season as a DC with the Broncos in 2022, but he left for Carolina after Denver hired head coach Nathaniel Hackett. Carolina's defense didn't perform well, but the season has been an overall mess for the Panthers, so Evero's stock shouldn't be impacted too much. Why do I like him? The reasons I've already stated, but I love that he is going, if he were to be hired, would probably carry a similar type of defense that Wink Martindale did. 3-4, man-focused, and I would say borderline aggressive. He's not nearly as aggressive as Wink Martindale. He's the number one most aggressive DC I've ever seen coaching in the NFL. But Evero, he's smart, he's young, he's new, and I think he would bring some juice to this team. And I like what I've heard from him around other people that cover this league. overall, my take is this. I want a defensive coordinator that is aggressive and also a good teacher, because I think that's important. I think as a DC, we get so caught up in times at just calling plays and being good statistically. But I think an underrated part of being a DC and an OC is being a teacher and being a developer and having these guys like Jordan Riley and Micah McFadden and other Dane Belton, drafting those guys, identifying talent, and helping nurture and teach them and help them grow in this league and become impact players. Those are two main keys that I'm going to be looking for when it comes to the DC. Who are two guys that I think make sense the most? I think Andre Patterson should get a crack at being the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. What he's done as the defensive line coach, not just for the Giants, but also the Minnesota Vikings before he became a part of this organization, the history is there. It is shown that most D linemen that play under Andre Patterson have a career year when doing so. Dexter Lawrence, Jordan Riley's look good, DJ Davidson has looked good. I'd be in on that. Outside guy, I think Mike Zimmer is number one for me. He's been a head coach, he's been a dominant defensive coordinator, and he runs an aggressive style of defense. And he can totally control that side of the ball. Those are two guys that I would love to see be finalists for the next job when it comes to the Giants DC. Who do you want as the Giants DC, though? You guys are smarter than me. You guys teach me so much, so I want to hear from you. Who do you want as the Giants DC down in the comment section? Dan Duggan of The Athletic put out a full article talking about Wink Martindale replacements, and some of the guys he mentioned that I did not mention include Patrick Graham, former Giants defensive coordinator. I'm not sure if that one is all that likely, considering he left the Giants to go with the Raiders. He was a guy that Brian Dable wanted to keep, but Patrick Graham left. Then you got Sean Desai and Matt Patricia, who currently coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm honestly good on those guys. I don't think Matt Patricia is that good, and Sean Desai has bounced around the last couple of years. Eric Washington is a name that I thought was interesting that Duggan brought up. He was a Bills assistant. He is the Bills assistant head coach, and he was the defensive line coach. And he worked alongside Dable for 3 years as that Bills D-line coach. And then you look at a guy like Anthony Weaver, current defensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and then Kris Richard, the former DC for the Saints, spent some time with the Cowboys. He's bounced around. I'm really not interested in anyone on this list outside of Eric Washington. I'm rolling with Andre Patterson or Mike Zimmer. Those are the two guys that I want to see be in contention to be the next DC for this football team. As always, just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you for tuning in to Giants Now. If you made it this far in the video, I kindly ask you to hit that thumbs up icon, subscribe, and turn your notifications on for free, passion-driven, entertaining, informative Giants content every day.